There's also that where you demand and with math, so very similar. But his research is really interesting because we talked a lot about like passes on the online body. Similarly, similarly philosophical way that I have trouble following, but I was like, I'm gonna learn it. I mean, Yeah, he was in me.
Do you know his supervisor?
No, his supervisor was very, okay.
Do you remember?
I think they're at
He's like a,
no, I never know. I think I did go to talk about it.
yeah, he's there.
Really? Yeah, okay, I was there, yeah, so I went in person last year, because we did get one on,
He's very sweet.
so I don't think that he can't start this is not because he's a postdoc, right? So, but he does do some really interesting. I do remember like this room. But fascinating. I've never been there. We had inquisitions, we had inquisitions around India, and they were very, very interesting. No, she had. It was, she was a journalist. Ask me that? Very interesting.
He said,
I will have to look up what his actual thesis was, because he sent it to me, but yeah, it was very like. Yeah, person's doing like research on like visual studies. Yeah, his thesis. Yeah. He is, yes. Yeah, literally, I was, oh my God. Yeah, from Dallas, but then same year, or I guess a year above, a year above. So funny.
Ah, vuoi fare no, 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 io c'è fatto tutto. Ah, ma tutto funziona. No, no, forse bisogna accendere lo streaming, ma anche perché devo fare cose. Ah, sta già condividendo. C'è già Zoom che sta condividendo lo schermo. Ah, ma quale schermo sta condividendo? Aspetta. John. Mi sa questo qui.
Because we didn't talk a lot about our pieces with each other.
Faccio vedere.
Underfunded and like not focused on how you because the course is
I think that after the conference we will if some problem happens, but in general we are in contact with the AI application. And I think that we need to I hope it's
we have two more people.
okay. I will try to put it on.
well, because they generally are.
so there's, yeah, there are
I'm just okay, we can start. Okay. Welcome back, everyone. So I'm honored to introduce our speaker from Tech Worker Coalition that aim for fairness and progressive change in the tech industry. The coalition was born from the movement in San Francisco. I think I read 10 years ago, something like that. The coalition now represents tech workers globally for fighting better for better working condition and more equitable future. Please welcome Giacomo Levi, that is part of Tech Worker Coalition here in Italy. So,
thank you. So thank you and welcome to Tech Workers Coalition Italia talk about AI and monkeys. So my name is Giacomo and I'm a tech worker. I work as a release engineer and I'm here to talk mainly about some reflections we made inside the Tech Workers Coalition and other groups. Some reflections we made about the relations between AI and labor in the current days. Sorry, I'm turning off this point. Okay. So, who are we? What does it mean to be a tech worker? And what is TWC, Tech Workers Coalition? So, by tech worker, in general, we mean every person that in some way gets their wage from the selling of software products or services. And this means across the whole supply chain. So this means developers, system administrators, designers, warehouse workers, social media managers, copywriters, service workers, data workers, people that label data sets for AI. Everyone who in some way is paid from the selling of software is considered to be a tech worker. As you can see, the monkey is a symbol that tech workers started to use internationally, and it's really related to, you may have heard the expression code monkey for self-describing by developers, or you may probably have heard of the concept of monkey on back. In general, the monkey is perfect for making memes, so it's a good symbol. And yeah, it gives this idea of insubordination, of freedom of being able to, or at least refusing to do what you don't want to do. And Tech Workers Coalition, as you said before, is a transnational organization, labor organization. This means that we are not a union and we don't have a legal value. I mean, we are just an informal organization, but we still operate in the labor field and we still basically support workers in reaching unions, especially in Italy, where they are very much disconnected. So we have, 15 chapters all over the world, mostly, obviously, in the United States and in the northwest of the world. And four of them are in Italy. In Italy, there is this uniqueness of, there is also a national chapter as opposed to other countries because TWC Italia was born during the pandemic, basically. So for the first months, it was completely online. And so for about a year, we made completely online meetings and activities. And then in around 2021, we started the four local chapters, Torino, Milano, Bologna, and Roma. And I guess right now, so we started, just to give you a measure, we started with about 100 people in 2020 in the general public chat, and right now we are 1,200 around. And so what is TWC's mission in general? In general, it is divided in 3 levels, also based on how long does it take to get there. So on the very short term, we are working on better working conditions, obviously. So you definitely will have heard of the riders' struggle, of in general struggles for better pay, less working hours, better on-call, better payment for on-call work. And on a more medium term level, we work on safer work environments. So we mean work environments free from racism, from sexism, and in general, any kind of discrimination. And the more, let's say, long-term objective goal that the Workers Coalition has is to understand the social implication of technology and, in general, make tech worker aware of their power, because I mean, somehow we are already aware, but we are not really using our power yet. So, I mean, why am I here, and why am I at an AI conference? Before answering that, I would like to talk with you a little bit about the meaning of AI, and I really love the talk before from Maria, who I see. Very good. And so if you ask the AI makers, the biggest companies, big tech companies, I mean, they are basically saving the world. They are producing digital intelligence that is most likely to benefit humanity as a whole. They are unraveling the mysteries of gravity. They are focusing on long-term impact, etc. And so their answer is clear, and they are determined to do something good for humanity with AI technology. But then you look at ChatGPT repeating Microsoft Windows licenses, and then you ask, is this really what you want to use to make the world a better place? And I think it's interesting because all of them, so I didn't find a good logo for XAI, but all of them have the AI word in the name. And I think it's interesting to go and look in the history what we meant, at least from a technical point of view, by AI. And the first example is very well known, probably you already know it, is ELIZA. ELIZA was basically a ChatGPT from the 60s, and it was a conversational interface. It was developed by Joseph Weizenbaum at MI6, sorry, MIT. Sorry, lapsus. its most famous script was Doctor, and it was a script simulating basically a conversation between a patient and the therapist. And it was a Rogerian therapist, so which is a psychology school, which I'm not an expert about, but as I understand, it's supposed to reflect back to the patient the question the statements that the patient make, and it worked pretty well. It had amazing success, at least not commercial success, but at least in the media. And one very funny anecdote I remember is that one time Weizenbaum was coming back to his office one late night, and he found one of his coworkers speaking, or at least typing, with Eliza, and they asked for him to leave the room because they were having a private conversation with Eliza. And so this is pretty interesting because the technology was very, very simple, was nothing compared to the complexity of large language models today. It was basically pattern matching and substituting the user input, but humans somehow started to show some kind of consciousness in that. And the second example is expert systems. So we skip ahead around 15, 20 years. And this is what we meant by AI in the 80s. So we had these very high-level manipulators of symbolic representations. So they basically were systems that were able to make inferences on the base of some knowledge codified in a formal language. So they were able to make something similar to human reasoning, and they were also able to explain their statement as opposed to the current models. And obviously they have different applications. Today there are still some applications for expert systems, especially in the medicine and biology field. And but they are completely different from what technically today we understand as AI. And yeah, if we skip to the last 15 years, you probably know this very much well than me, very much more well than me. We have the deep learning wave. So as you know, in around 2010, GPUs, the social web, a series of events coincided, and we started to have a success in successfully working deep learning models. And I think it's pretty interesting that also in the last 15 years by AI, we meant some things pretty different from each other. So in the beginning, it was segmentation models and image recognition and image vectorization models. Then we had the reinforcement learning wave with robots and with the agents capable of acting in an environment of producing a policy for acting in an environment. And today we are going to large language models, which are the best thing around. And so the applications of these technologies, which use the same name, are very much different. And so the point, I guess, is that AI doesn't mean nothing. I mean, its meaning, the meaning of the signifier is completely historically determined. And it's just the same as this graph that I made with the Midjourney. If you go and look closer, none of the numbers make sense, none of the writings make sense, but still, it looks nice. And so, yeah, what we mean today by AI is generative deep learning models. And you may ask, I mean, what is the problem? Why are you here talking about this? And I mean, it's not a language problem. I mean, it's that the language shapes the world in which you're living, in which you're acting. So the problem is that people, when talking about AI, they have this image of AI being able to act, AI being able to reason, to provide explanation, or to provide answers to questions, or at least we have this tendency of perceiving the world as something like us. We see the face in the moon, we see faces in cars, and we see things that appear human all around us, but it doesn't mean that they are human. And I think this is, yeah, I like this picture because often when you talk these days with someone about large language models and you say, I don't know, we could make this with the language model, and they say, yeah, I mean, we could make a model that goes through all the books that it read and makes a summary of all of them. And this is something that deep learning models do not do. I mean, they don't have a database. They can't open a PDF and summarize it. And they are basically glorified statistical distributions. So it is problematic if we interact with them as they are intelligent. And I mean, big tech, the AI makers have all the reasons to push this narrative, and they have no reason right now for taking responsibility for a so-called sentient machine. I mean, what happens if a sentient machine reads a book and then produces another book? Is it the same as if I read Murakami and then I made another book? Is it the same if if I make a damage to public infrastructure, I'm responsible. If an AI makes damage to someone or something, who is responsible to pay for that damage? And obviously, big tech doesn't want to pay, doesn't want to take responsibility, does not have any legal obligation right now to do it. And so by speaking about artificial intelligence as intelligence, which is something which is still pretty blurry as a concept in science, we are validating the framework, we are taking the side. And so what can we do? I mean, I'm a worker, you are mostly academics, as I believe. What can we do concretely? And there are many ways. I mean, there are at least 3 of them, which I wrote down, and we have the workers coalition approach, which is inside big tech. So we have workers that inside the technology industry refuse, or at least try to use the power to influence how AI is made and the direction that AI is taking. We have an outside approach, which is basically you, this conference, academia, and the civil society, which are working outside the big tech to make research, to study legislations, to regulate big tech. And then there is the third approach, which is basically the, I would call it the alternative tech way I wrote, but it's basically the hacker way. It's where you have people that are writing free as in freedom software, that are writing an alternative technology to the one produced by big tech. And so, I mean, we are workers, we have responsibility, and the tech industry would not exist without us. I mean, if you don't want to see facial recognition algorithms bombing hospitals in Gaza, it is only your responsibility to say no. And I wanted to cite this campaign that tech workers are supporting worldwide, is No Tech for Apartheid. And basically, Amazon Web Services, Google, and other cloud executives, companies signed a 1.2 billion contract to provide cloud technology to the Israeli government. And by doing business with the Israeli apartheid, Amazon and Google are making it easier for the Israeli government to surveil Palestinians and to force them off their lands. And tech workers have been supporting this campaign worldwide. They have been facing retaliation. So I invite you to support the campaign and please pay attention to your privacy from your employer. And yeah, the point is that without us, there would be no technology. It is only our responsibility to shape it in a way that we like. And so I'd like to talk about, so if you read the abstract, you probably saw I was mentioning Netflix. And what about it? And I thought it would be interesting to see some real-world applications of AI and how they are planning to be used in the entertainment industry. So you for sure know about the strike, and so on the May 2nd, yeah, on May 2nd, the Writers Guild of America started a strike. It's the first strike in around 15 years, I believe. And there were basically three instances. And obviously, after COVID, economic conditions worsened for everyone. And after COVID, after the war, Ukrainian war, so workers were demanding better economic conditions, literally better pays. They were demanding a better payment for streaming because since the explosion of streaming services, their contract was not dated and they were paid flat for as with regard to use. So something that does not happen in TV, something that is already one of their rights for TV shows, were negated to them just because of the new of the rising of the new technology. And the third one, which is the point of why I talk about this, is the regulation about AI. So workers were worried that were worried with reason, were worried that companies would replace them with ChatGPT, basically. And I think, yeah, it's pretty interesting because it's pretty interesting and dystopic. The picture that that the implementation of this point would look like. I mean, you definitely know that in July, also the actors joined them because they were facing the same condition. And so when I read about this in these months, I was imagining a Hollywood executive, I mean, or a group of Hollywood executives in their room, and just like moving their hands this way and just saying, yeah, we can automate everything. We can get rid of actors, we can get rid of writers, we can get rid of even watchers. I don't know. We can make everything with AI and make a ton of money. And so for the Writers Guild of America, this was the third longest strike in their history. For the actors, it was the longest strike in the whole of the history of SAG-AFTRA. And I mean, it was not nice to see. I mean, it had a very big mediatic coverage. You probably know all about this. You probably know that Hollywood executives were ready for people to lose their home while striking. And the point is that in the end, they signed. So the Association of Motion Picture and Television Producers signed the contract. So at least this is the contract for writers that was signed at the end of September. At the beginning of November, there was a signature also for actors contract, but yeah, basically the points were these. So writers got their increases, so in the minimums, and better attention at benefits. And they won, at least, they forced a regulation and about AI. So what they got is that they can use AI. So a writer, a worker can use AI in their work if they choose to do so, and if it's compliant with company policy, blah, blah, blah. But the company cannot force the writer to use AI. Also, I think it's very interesting how the WGA chose a side, as we said before. So right now, AI-generated material can be copyrighted and is not covered by their contract, and so it can be used to undermine rights, basically. And so, after all of this, what are we going to do? I mean, we saw the history, we saw one good example of workers organizing in the workplace, and yeah, what should we do? It's pretty easy. So first, reach out to your local TWC. Here I wrote TWC, but really just join any kind of work organization, just join any kind of association, or just don't join any association, but speak with your fellow tech workers, with your co-workers. And yeah, this is probably the most important point, to speak with your co-workers. It is not easy. I'm not very good at it, but it's important. It's important, especially to build trust between each other. So to be able to act together as a whole when you want to do so. And it's not easy, but it's fundamental. So speak with your coworkers, talk about your problems, and I mean not in the sense of being dramatic, not because of, you don't want to go there and complain about your problems, but you want to understand, or at least you want to share your problems, and hopefully you will figure out that you have the same problems and the solutions are collective. You have the same problem and the same solution. And yeah, in general, just organize. And if you don't want to see some kind of technology in the world, it is your responsibility, it is our responsibility to say no, and to organize our co-workers to do so as well. And yeah, I wanted to, so everything nice you heard, everything interesting, useful. It's not my original work. It's been the result of collective elaboration and yeah, sense making that I had the luck to make in some events in the last months. And every error, every incorrect information, every misrepresentation that you heard, it's definitely my fault, and I'm sorry. But please do make a question, and I will try to answer. And yeah, I wanted to thank all of you, thank all the people that helped me with the presentation. And yeah, reach out if you want.
Thank you, Giacomo, for your nice talk. Any questions from the audience?
Yeah. Well, I have 2 points. First of all, I want to thank you so much, not just for your presentation, but especially for what are you doing with your organization. Because I'm strongly believe that tech workers will be a driving force in implementing responsible AI approach. Because of your best data, to understand what are the social political implications, technical specification, and also to translate actual principles in workable arrangements. And in the last few years, we witnessed a lot of examples of tech workers, Google, Amazon, that was able to stop the development of some application regarding facial recognition or immediately application of artificial intelligence. And so I'm curious to know more about what are your methods and strategy to make your voice heard in front of the company. This is the first point. The second point is a vision about the slide that we did about the narrative about sensing AI that push by the company to, avoid their responsibility for what this system can do. And I think that probably there is also another reason. I think this is a rhetorical device that is used strategically to divert the attention toward some problem related to an technology that doesn't exist yet, and so to lower the pressure toward the current application of AI and what are the problem with application that we use every day. I don't know if you can agree with this observation of your point of view from this side.
So first of all, I'm not inside the AI industry. I don't work there. I studied machine learning at the university. I start with the second point. I agree with your second point. I think that there is, so definitely, I mean, for sure, they are pushing this consciously. For sure, especially OpenAI has this kind of religious aura around them. But I agree with what you say. I agree that they may be using this to divert the attention from the actual problems that the technology they produce have. And so about your first point, it's a difficult question because the first question I repeat, so just to be sure, is which kind of methods are tech workers using to use
strategies to make your voice heard by companies to react when you are asked to produce something that you do not you quite connect or.
So in Italy, it's one thing. In the US, it's another thing. So if you are, let's talk about Italy because I'm Italian. The thing is, for example, Italy is not a big producer of technology. We don't export technology to the world. So also the work of tech workers coalition in different countries is very different. For example, in Italy, salaries, wages are very much different from the one in San Francisco. A developer working in Bologna and a developer working in San Francisco are paid very differently. And so, for example, in Italy, Tech Workers Coalition is more focused on the first level I talked about. So we are more focused on better working conditions and safer work environments because some kind of actions are simply not possible here. So for example, striking in solidarity riders and programmers. It's impossible. You have the riders in Italy, but you have the programmers of Just Eat, I don't know, in United States or in London. So in some places in the world, Tech Workers Coalition is able to do that. So is able, and the method is always the same. It is the unions. It is basically unionizing and striking and picketing and the usual. They can be criticized. Their effectiveness can be criticized. For example, the effectiveness of a strike as doing damage in a software company is not the same as a factory. So if you interrupt the production in a factory, it's a very different thing if you don't than if you don't make commits if you're a developer for a whole day. I mean, you are not necessarily making damage by striking, but the methods are always the one of the historically used by unions. So yeah, striking, picketing, and so on. And this you can do in companies that are actually making big technology and selling it to big governments. For example, in Italy, where the economic tissue is very much different, it is very much less likely that a worker would strike to prevent some facial recognition algorithm being sold to some dictatorship in the world. I mean, we had Hacking Team. I don't know if you know it, but in 2014 there was this company that sold basically surveillance devices to all of the worst dictatorships in the whole world. It was based in Milan. There were some militaries involved. I mean, they had some participations. So it's not an absolute, but the very same act of refusing to produce something because it's unethical, it's not possible to do everywhere. If you're doing a software that makes accounting for a company, it's very difficult to have ethical problems. I mean, if you're not tracking every second of the worker's time, it's not something that you can do everywhere, but the methods are for sure solidarity, trust between workers, co-workers. So you build trust between your co-workers when you have a certain kind of trust between each other, and it's something that I can't put in a presentation. It's something that you have to do on your own, and it's different for every person, but and it's difficult, obviously, but it's worth. And once you can act as a group, you can possibly, for example, use one of the unions method. So basically striking. I'm not sure if I answered. I said a lot of things, very much.
Very well. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Other questions?
I have a question. Just in Poland, there are not a lot of trade unions among social about with computer scientists, so it's not like possible. I don't know why, but they work more individually. You know, they are not united. So we have a lot of struggles with that. So I wanted to ask you about the surveillance during remote work, because there are systems that are monitoring the process of your work when you are in a remote team. For instance, you are based in Bologna or Italy and you work for the San Francisco team. And employers are just monitored. And what's your position and the union for that? Are there any like solutions for this problem?
So, I mean, my position is obviously me, Tech Workers Coalition. Every worker doesn't want to be tracked. I mean, it's not nice. Even logging your hours, I find it very painful. And that's the least that can happen. So yeah, we are definitely against it. How to protect against, how to defend yourself from this? It's
No, you have to address this problem because I understand that you have to be monitored somehow if you push forward work. But I don't know, is it good to monitor what you are doing on your screen, for instance?
So for sure,
Yeah.
I don't think that's correct. And also, so I'm not an expert. I am a worker. I'm not an organizational expert. But from what I read around, it seems that also the very act of estimating things. So I think that some. So for sure, I think we all agree that intellectual work is difficult to measure. So it's difficult to measure the output. You can't do just like factories. So to track the output of intellectual workers, it's very difficult. So what in the last 20 years, I think the agile approach was good. I mean, I don't know if you, especially in software development, this is related to software development, there is this organizational practice of agile, and where you, as opposed to the old method where you basically made a big estimate and you hope that you for 3 years were able to produce everything, you are much more able to correct your estimates. So you are also less controlled by necessity. By choosing an organizational framework for your work, you are already affording to some kind of tracking. What I wanted to say is that I saw, but I'm not an expert, but I can give you some references. I saw that there is this new kind of movement, I don't know, which is no estimates, sorry. So they are completely against the concept of giving an estimate of.
measure your
Yeah,
work.
thank you. And because they say that especially in software development, it is meaningless to measure it in the same way you do for other work.
Yeah. For instance, what's the point of measuring how many codes lines you wrote?
Sorry, can you?
What's the, like, it's a problem with KPIs, for instance, how many lines of code you wrote for this day or another. And like, I think it's problematic to like compare them. And then on Monday wrote 50 lines, on Friday 51, whatever.
The question is, why is it problematic?
Like, yes.
Because, for example, so the most easy answer, this is a very complicated topic, but the most quick answer is that, for example, depending on the programming language you use, the number of lines changes completely.
Yeah.
So it's, for sure, I would not agree to this kind of measure. It makes no sense. Do we need, I mean, I understand the need to track expenses. So I guess some kind of answer to that will have to be given. And I'm not sure if it's the worker's responsibility to do so.
But you have to deal with it.
I know, exactly. So yeah, the honest answer is that I don't know. What we say usually to people is that to protect individually yourself from these kind of instruments, if you are lucky and you, for example, use the agile methodology, it is entirely up to you because it works like your manager comes to you and asks you how much will it take to do so. And if you answer honestly, he gets an expectation. If you answer not honestly, he gets another expectation. And it is only up to you to figure out how honestly to answer. And so I don't have a good answer. I'm sorry.
Managers.
But yeah, I think nobody likes to be tracked.
But for example, in my company, we self-estimate, we track our hours, but it's for not being overloaded with projects. So it's, of course, we estimate an amount of time that we should work on a specific project, but it's a matter of organizing ourselves not to go under stress, or so it's the same. Let's say we are quite sincere about the time we spend on certain tasks, and it's this is for us to protect us.
I think it's a good point that the company culture matters very much because no matter the instrument, if they want, they can always try and make it painful for you. If they want to make you work good, and so not be overloaded with projects, these can be useful instruments.
So this is what I studied. I did my thesis on U.S. unions' responses to outbreak management. But one of the things that I think is really interesting about this approach is the uniting of the different sectors of tech workers. We talk about uniting software with warehouse, with drivers, with you're building this really large coalition. And one of the things that I noticed when I was talking to the unions is there, at least in the U.S., there's this kind of turf war that goes on. And a kind of prevailing thought that the concerns of somebody like a warehouse worker is going to be very different than the concerns of somebody like, like a software developer for Alphabet. So I'm kind of curious what you think that the resonating, if the mission falls under these kind of three broad areas, what you think that the kind of message that resonates most with that wide coalition is. And yeah, just kind of how best to build that coalition, particularly when the union tactics themselves can be kind of, in some ways, quite limiting, right?
It's
hard.
It's very hard. We think about this a lot. You really got us. So, I mean, so let's start from the definition. The definition is it's definitely very broad and is intentionally so, and it is quite artificial, and unions don't understand it. I mean, I'm joking, but so yeah, the thing is that as you said before, the founding myth of the Workers Coalition is that in 2014, inside Google, there were, how do you call them, kitchen workers, service workers that were about to be laid off and to get consultants. And that happened that, the founding myth is that programmers strike together with service workers and basically expanding the privilege that they have to support in solidarity with their coworkers. And and this is wonderful, and this is the reason, because the definition of the workers, because after that strike, some people from the programming team, from the development team, and from the kitchen got together and made TWC. So this is why the definition is phrased like that, is that broad, and it sadly is a definition that mostly works in the United States, and this is in Italy is pretty obvious. I was saying before, you can't today make just developers and riders strike together in Bologna, for example. So yeah, so that definition has some kind of problems. I mean, in the United States, it's perfect because you have the campuses, you have all of the workers there. They share the work time, they share the workplace. I mean, they are there. It's very much like an old factory. It's very different, for example, in Italy, or also in full remote companies. That's whole can of worms that I won't open today. But about unions, so my impression is that maybe in the United States they understand it a little bit better than here. I don't know, because, for example, you have Amazon Workers United, you have Alphabet Workers United, I guess. So you already have this kind of alt labor organization, which are basically the same as TWC, and they are, if I understood correctly, they are just like STWC transversal. And so my opinion is that, for example, I mean, we all know Chris Moll history, the New York history, and in Amazon, I mean. So my personal impression was that in the US, you figured it out and you are able to do it.
I mean, well, I'm curious, are the Italian unions a lot more entrenched in there? So I don't know much about the Italian union sector. So is it that they are very sectorally entrenched?
Yes, and also, I'm not sure how is it working in the United States, but in Italy you have these collective contracts.
Oh, we don't have those.
So
we do it on a side-by-side basis.
Exactly.
Yeah, but, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, also, I mean, I'm not an expert. I don't want to say one is better than the other. Also, collective contracts have problems. But for this reason, in Italy, unions are very much bound to the contract. And so they want to represent, I mean, they want to represent you. I don't know. I mean, I don't have a good answer. I mean, it is difficult. It is an open problem. One thing we are actively doing is being in contact with unions. We are in Italy. We set up in TWC Italia on the website. You can find a button which you can click if you have some problems at work, and we will take your form. And based on where you are, we have contacts with unions, mostly around Italy, and we can send you directly to a union person that will listen to you and will care for you. And yeah, in general, what we are focusing on in Italy is try to diminish the distance between unions and workers, because there's not a lot of trust from both sides, and yeah, they should work together.
Just like yeah, those, because I really appreciate the fact that you are recognizing like that the technology is spread around the long chain. So the AI is not. I was really from here with the training. Talking about the materials, also part of the AI. It's not only software, it's terms of people mining around the world, or yeah, and also like data center construction, and also yeah, there is obviously a factory that produces the chips and GPU. So the test worker is all interconnected. It's not only like a Google or software engineer producing, but they are spread around the world. So I really appreciate it. And I think one problem in Italy is that sometimes unions are too secure, so they recognize only that they are very interesting in their, I don't know, like people that work in warehouse. I'm going to talk only for this, and the people that working for warehouse in Italy and Amazon, they are not like a trade union with people that, I don't know, like yeah, manage that warehouse. They probably also here in Europe that don't last for minutes.
So can you repeat the question?
No, no, it's okay.
Okay.
But yeah,
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Another thing I must say is that probably we would need also someone from a union here, because they have the legal understanding that I don't have. Talking about these problems with some kind of union worker friends that I have, they tend to say so, because one thing, for example, in Italy, that especially developers always say is that why don't we have a collective contract for ourselves that describes our conditions? And the answer I got from a union worker, from a union representative, was, why do you need it? I mean, why are you special? What's the difference between you and other workers? And it's not a so easy question, because you may ask, for example, I work, how do you call it, agile work, so I don't have working hours. But a union worker would be very much against this, not having a very fixed amount of time that you can work. Not having hours means you can always be on doing extra work. But I love the way I'm working. I don't have to log all the time. I was forced to in my old company, and yeah, I really love how I'm working. And so I don't think there's a clear consensus on this yet, neither on the worker side nor on the union side.
Any other questions?
Maybe I have thank you so much for the presentation. I was wondering, how do you think an academia be in a conversation with this kind of work, if at all, right? Because I have, sometimes when I talk to practitioners and people actually like affected by problems of working within sectors, many times I think academia is perceived a bit as extractive, and I think like, we go and interview people and then learn about their problems and then just kind of like write a paper. And I think that that's not right. And is there a way, do you think, in which there can be some synergy between academia? In the graph you were showing, there was an overlap. What would you say that overlap can be from your perspective?
So I'm not sure concretely, but the reasoning behind it is that yeah, for sure academia is, so at least this is my opinion. Academia is defining the border of what we know, the distinction between what we know and not know. and maybe academia can take a side. I mean, academia can provide a better frame than the big text one, for example.
Some proposals of legislation
Or yeah, exactly.
different procedures.
Yeah. How to a new way to conceptualize AI without it being sentient or intelligent, at least up until we can see it. I'm not sure if I answered.
No, yeah, it's also such an open question. Not really here. Keep on thinking, yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Do you have also members in academia? That's what I want to ask.
Yeah.
Both from the worker side, I mean.
Yeah.
I'm PhD, it's not even a job in Italy, so we don't have a union, so I wouldn't know.
But there is some kind of alt labor organization, if you want. I can.
You mean in Italy?
In Italy, Associazione Dottorandi.
Yeah.
Adi.
It's the most similar thing, but it's not actually a thing. I don't know if there's something for higher grades in the pyramid of academia, but I'm not yet there. No, but I was thinking about both that, so like people from academia as workers and both as consultants, because like I don't think that big tech corporations really care about what we are saying in general, unless you bring them something that they can explore in terms of the money in the end. But the example you made, the use case with Netflix, I think was very interesting. Now there is a similar thing going on, which did not result in a strike yet, but I'm assuming with the Dream Trucks thing on YouTube, now they have this, I don't know if you've heard of that, it's a new thing, like they are building AI systems inside YouTube, where you can put up to 30 seconds of music generated with AI, with the voices of some famous artists that gave their voice, and then they will get royalties from that, even because it's their voice. And I mean, they are doing that in a way that, okay, like we're giving royalties, so we're on the good side, yeah, whatever. But then in the end, if you think about all the rest of the artists, which are not in the pool of probably 10, like what happens? So I'm assuming there's going to be some strike about that at some point. But I think academia is telling this, it's been telling these things from a while, even in, I'm taking this example because I worked a little bit in music generation in the past, and a lot of people, are saying, do not use end-to-end models for that. But do they care? They don't, and it's like what we can do about that. It's not about we stop doing our things, and they will say, okay, we'll do ours anyway. So what can we actually do then?
Okay, so I'm not sure I follow the question. Is it about the technical merits? Is it about technical models? So
No, it's about how, like, if you have some people from academia in the tech workers coalition, and what we can do to get to the companies, because it's not just before you say if you don't want to take part of some technological advance, just don't develop that, which makes a lot of sense. But in the end, it's not even me who, I'm not doing that, but I just want to say, do it in another way. It's not, I'm not telling you don't do that, just do it differently. But how can we reach a large enough pool of people to get some practical results from that?
So you mean you
change
can't
the way-
strike because you are not working for a big tech company,
Yeah.
but you can build an alternative technology that is way less exploitative and so for the user in academia.
Yeah.
Okay, and how can you do that? Is that the question?
How can I do? I mean, technically speaking.
Yeah, I mean,
I might be able to do that. Maybe I don't have enough funds to do that, but I can. Let's imagine I do that. They would probably ignore that.
yeah, you are asking.
The wrong person.
No, I mean, you are asking if I build an alternative to capitalism, will capitalism care?
More
I mean,
or less. Yeah, I could say that.
I mean, because I don't think they would care. I mean, I think that we have to force them, and the one that can force them is the one that can take away their money, so their workers, and governments, legislations. And for sure, I think building the alternative is quite important. In my personal time, I spend a lot of time developing free software just for fun. And I think, I strongly believe in that approach. I don't think we will be able to reach hegemony. I mean, we won't be able to beat capital just by building an alternative technology. But it's a way forward. It's not worthless. I mean, it's not the only thing we should do. It's not worthless. It's important. For sure, one thing you can do as an academia worker, I mean, postdoc and doctorate, PhDs are obviously they are not privileged as full-time professors. But if you are a full-time professor, you can make a lot of noise. I mean, in academia, you are powerful mediatically. So for sure, that's one useful thing you can do. For sure, building an alternative, it's useful. I'm not sure. No, I'm not sure about the striking union situation at the upper levels of the university. So I'm not sure how do they work. But if you can't directly strike to force your company, for sure you can find some other way. It's not all the ways are as effective.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Okay, let's thank again Giacomo for
Thank you.
his talk. So now we have the lunch break of 1 hour and a half. We talked about, we do the lunch break here outside as usual for, let's say, 45 minutes, 45, 50 minutes. Maybe then, if you want, we can go out and have a walk in the city center of Bologna and come back here at 2:30. We are going all together. So if we are going all of us, I'm going to close the doors. If someone wants to stay here, if don't want to come out, I can stay here, or someone of the organization can stay here and stay here. So let us know if you don't want to go out, and we will arrange to stay here. Thank you.